said that growing older meant you had to grow up. So today is a rainy, grey, dull Monday. But you know what? I don't care. I had the best weekend ever. So this weekend was my birthday, and it was just lovely. So on Saturday morning, nice lazy start to the day, open a few presents, and then we spent the rest of the day with friends and, all the usual cake, burgers, flying drones over the house, launching radio-controlled cars into my flower bed. Just a normal Saturday. And I also took the opportunity to just have a little bit of a relax and a reassess of where things are going and where I feel my projects are. Had a bit of fun adding new stash, or rather existing stash that I still hadn't taken photos of, to Ravelry. And what else? I worked on my Gemini. Here. So it's coming along lovely. Not a huge amount of progress, but I'm definitely enjoying working with two balls to kind of even out the wild and wacky beautifulness of it. I frogged a couple of projects, no shame. I started 198 Yards of Heaven shawl in sock weight, and while I adored the kind of pastel-y colours, I felt like it had a place somewhere else. I didn't feel like it was the right yarn for that project. So that's been frogged. And I also frogged kind of my very early brioche attempts, which were just downright shameful. So they weren't worth keeping, and that's yarn that'll get used again. I fixed a couple of projects, which always feels good. Projects that had been put in the corner for a couple of months because they were in a pretty rubbish state. And they're now just ready to carry on. And oh yes, my wild wacky mohair project that I dug out when I cleaned out my cart of shame has been moved to new needles. They were previously on brass needles, and I think that played a big part in me not wanting to use them, because brass smells like coins. It smells like... Ugh. So I've moved them to some of my higher needles, and while it's still the mad, wild red and orange mohair project, at least it's one that doesn't smell funny as well. So might actually get finished. Pretty good going. September's always been a special time for me. I suppose because as with a lot of people, it's the start of the new school year. I just remember that feeling of cracking that notebook for the first time and just getting started with that nice handwriting that lasts about 2 days, but it's special for that time. And setting new goals, having those new hopes for new projects to come, whether it's with school, with new classes you take. There's always something very special about September. So I like choosing new things to do, new things to try. And one of the things this September that I want to bring back into my life is more spinning. I think spinning in the same way has something very special in that it allows you to create using the fibre really something quite special. You can create something really chunky, you can create absolutely fine lace weight, or anything in between. You can mix in some crazy fibres, you can keep it pure white. And I remember going to the very, very occasional visits I've done to my local guild. So it's a Spinners and Weavers guild, and they meet every Saturday, every 2 months, I think. And it's a room full of mostly women, but also some men of all ages, sitting down with their projects. And you've got the true variety from someone who literally takes a sheep fleece that's in a bag, plonks it next to them, and just takes one lock at the time and spins it into fairly rustic yarn, all the way to people who use pure silk and make this absolutely beautiful lace weight. And I just felt like there was so much to learn, so much to discover. And in that vein, I'd love to show you just a little bit of what happens when you take fibre all the way to yarn. Our yarn begins with some lovely locks that have been sheared from a sheep. In this case, these are Cotswold sheep locks, and they're nice and springy and curly and quite lustrous. So once they're sheared, they're then washed and turned into just nice locks like this. In my case, I decided that I wanted quite a punky, funky sheep, so I dyed the locks purple and blue. And once they were dyed, I could then use either a drum carder, which is more suitable for finer yarns, or in this case, I used these tools. So these are combs, which are used to comb the locks and turn them into the next stage, which is a long sliver that has been pulled from this fibre, hand combed together. So we can see that the purple and the blue are starting to mix together to create a lovely heathered colour. Once I've got this, I can spin it. Here I've spun stay there. So now I've spun a 2-ply yarn using these slivers and plied it to make a nice well-rounded yarn that I then used to knit a sample. And again, this sample shows the lovely heathered nature of the yarn, of the fibre, now that it's been nicely combed together, spun, plied, and knitted. So this is how you go from fibre to dyed fibre to mixed combed fibre to yarn, and finally to a knitted product. So do you see why I love spinning so much? It's just brilliant being able to have so much control, or just let the yarn speak for itself. So a few examples of what I've spun over the years. So I've got this lovely single in kind of wintry, light purpley and blue tones, which has lots of sparkle in it. I'm not sure if that can be seen, but I fell in love with this fibre. I wouldn't be able to tell you where it comes from. And it's just a very simple single that will one day become a lace shawl. Then, in wild and wacky colour tones, is this orangey, red, fiery, thick and thin single. So in this case, I, on purpose, relatively on purpose, went from thick to thin and back and forth, so that when knitted it'll be nice and chunky and textured and characterful. So again, this was just various bits of fibre that I mixed together to create my own bat, and I spun from that. And then if you really want something completely crazy, this yarn is merino with fibre in my mouth, with I think these were locks of Gotland sheep or something like that. So again, I picked some merino fibre of colours that I liked, made a bat with that. And then as I was spinning, I mixed in the curls, and you can see that the curls completely stick out, wild and wonderful. And again, no idea what I'll make with this. In fact, I might just wear it like this. What do you think? New fashion for the winter? So I love how spinning just allows you to create your own yarn, which takes you even one step closer to full control compared to buying yarn where somebody else has decided how it'll be spun. And it's a craft where you can go on forever. There's so much to learn, so much to discover. So I've had a lot of fun with these little creations. If you're a spinner, do come and share your creations on our forum on Ravelry. Okay, now I've been waiting since I started filming to show you this. If you watched last week my Hedgehog Fibres stash enhancement, I'll link to it right there. I was a little bit baffled and confused, and I was looking for a third skein in the bag. I never quite explained what was going on because I wasn't quite sure, but when I spoke to the Hedgehog Fibres team, they were mortified because they had just by mistake forgotten to put my Twist Club skein into the bag. So they quickly told me, no problem, we'll post it to you. And Beata, the creator of Hedgehog Fibres, told me that she would add some goodies. You know, which is nice. And then it arrived this morning. Oh, let me show you. I swear it took me an hour to get my jaw off the floor. So first, again, little warning, if you're part of the Twist Club and you don't want to see this month's spoiler, close your eyes for just 10 seconds. So this is the Twist Sock Club yarn that I was waiting for. So the Twist Club is slightly different to the Sock Club in that it's a higher twist fibre and it's 80% blue-faced Leicester, 10% nylon. That makes 90%, doesn't it? So it must be 90% blue-faced Leicester and 10% nylon. But slightly higher twist, therefore even more suited to things like socks. And just fantastic colours. Just really lively and fun. I just adore Hedgehog Fibres colours. Okay, I'm putting this one away. Club people, you're now safe to watch. And now comes the supposed goodies that they were sending me. They really did it nicely. So I've got one of their very coveted gold bags, complete with the gold little pocket with some nice gold little pins to accompany it. But truly, it's what's in that bag that's amazing. They sent me 3 extra skeins. It's truly amazing. They sent me 2 of these Lotus merino singles, which are kind of blue and green with bits of dark grey and hot pink, and just really it's got the signature Hedgehog Fibres colours to them. And I mean, this one I adore, and nobody's getting their mitts on this one. It's black and navy blue and a rich deep teal in the sock yarn base. So that's the same base as the other 2 club skeins that I got last week. So that's 90% superwash merino, 10% nylon. And I don't know what I'm making with this, but I am absolutely in adoration of this, of these colours. So huge thank you, Beata and the team. Thank you so much. That's beautiful. caught in the act of getting a glass of wine. So let's see, where was I? Had to go acquire a little bit of wine. So I'm really enjoying having this Ravelry group for viewers of the podcasts and I suppose friends. And I found it really interesting that there's a number of non-native English speakers who seemed almost, well, apologetic for not having a perfect English. Really, when you're speaking or learning a second or third language, or more in some cases, there's really nothing to feel apologetic about. It's just like any craft and any art. It's amazing being able to speak multiple languages, opening yourself up to being able to speak with people of other cultures. I think that's just as great and wonderful as learning to knit. And when you learn to knit, you'll drop some stitches, you'll have the frustration of having no idea how to bind off, or just each and every step is something new to learn. And there's no shame in that. In fact, I think it's something to be incredibly proud of. So come and join us in the Ravelry group. I think we're quite a friendly bunch of people, and we'll always welcome you no matter what. I suppose it's worth mentioning that English isn't my first language either. I grew up in Canada, but I grew up in French, not in Quebec. I grew up in Ontario, very close to the river that then borders onto the province of Quebec, but I'm from Ontario, and I suppose I grew up in French. Music, TV, everything was pretty much in French. And I do have some pretty clear memories of English oral test days where I would be sick, where I would be doing everything in my power to avoid having to go and speak English in front of my classmates. But as with everything, there comes a point where you realize that having that skill will do you a lot of good in the future, and it's worth getting past that fear of trying something new. And I suppose that parallels very well with learning new crafts. I suppose I've now got no fear. I'll try anything, almost anything, and just see how it goes. Have a bit of fun, give it a try. If it's not for me, that's it. Like weaving, I'm still in that funny place where I don't know whether it's something that I'll carry on doing long term, but trying something like spinning was quite a discovery. So when I started spinning, I got a little spindle kit from Hilltop Cloud, and I would recommend, if anyone's learning to spin, it's a lovely little box that arrives with a wooden spindle, 3 different kinds of fibre to give you a chance to try what different fibres feel like, and a nice little tutorial on how to get started. I kind of then graduated and decided that I wanted to get a wheel, and I bought an Ashford Traditional, which is one of the more common wheels you'll find in the UK and in a lot of different parts of the world. Ashford is originally from New Zealand. So I bought the wheel from a friend of mine and brought it home, having never used one and having actually no idea how to set it up. So spent a little time fiddling and trying to work out where the drive band went and how to use the brake and how to put the bobbin in the right way. And after 1 or 2 evenings of a little bit of swearing and frustration, I eventually kind of got into my groove and realized that, yeah, I think I quite like it. Since then, in fact, it's quite a nice full circle for that wheel. That Ashford Traditional I then sold on to a lovely lady called Libby. Libby, you might also know as Truly Myrtle. So she's also a blogger, podcaster. She makes so much stuff. She sews a lot, she knits a lot. In fact, I'll include a link to her podcast in the description. And Libby then moved back to New Zealand, and to the best of my knowledge, the spinning wheel went back to New Zealand with her. So a wheel born in New Zealand came and spent some years in the UK. I think the wheel I had was in 1981. like me. And it then made its way back after a few owners back to New Zealand, which is quite fun. Nowadays I have two wheels, so I have an Ashford Traveller, which ironically travels a lot less well than the traditional in terms of space it takes. But it's a great wheel, and that's the wheel I've been using to make my rainbow unicorn yarn, which will eventually become a jumper. In fact, that's this is all I've got left to spin before I am at the stage where I can start plying. So I've had this Traveller for 2 or 3 years now, and I really like it. I tend to kind of keep it nearby, and it's the one I'll use most of the time. I also have an Ashford Joy, which is a portable wheel, and I've even used it in the field during the village fete, which was quite cool. So a few of us met up at the village fete and showed kids and people interested how spinning worked by helping them make friendship bracelets that were just kind of plied onto themselves to understand the basic concepts of pulling and spinning and plying their yarn. So really, it's just one of those activities that's very meditation-like once you get to grips with it. I think at first it requires a lot of concentration and a lot of focus, but once you get into your groove, I think it's one of those activities that, a little bit like knitting a repetitive pattern or knitting a lot of stockinette, you just kind of get into it, and it's great while watching a movie or while doing something relaxing. So very soon, hopefully, I'll be able to show you the plying stage of my unicorn yarn, which is not the same unicorn yarn as Easy Knits. It's just, I like unicorns. What can I say? So one more little thing I wanted to show you before we get to the end of this episode is the Zoom Loom. So this goes quite nicely with spinning in that it's an opportunity to just try weaving a little square, just this kind of size, and seeing what your yarn will look like. So for example, I have here a ball of yarn that I have spun. I think that was chain plied, so that's a 3-ply plied onto itself, and I was curious to see what it would look like. I suppose it's not quite the same as knitting it in stockinette, but it gives you a good idea. So I wove it on the Zoom Loom with, you can see there's also strands of white, so I also used just some white Aran weight to accompany it, and it gave me a little sense of how the colour would work out. I quite like this one. It makes kind of a bit of a gradient, and they make great coasters. And I've made some here with some commercial tweed, which I quite like. Again, that one's kind of matted itself, felted itself into place a little bit, which makes for, again, works great for a coaster. And some other scraps I had, which are a mix of handspun and commercial yarn. And it's just a nice way to see what kind of effect you'll get. Of course, nothing beats making a swatch, especially when you're working with handspun. Often you have no choice but to make a swatch because it doesn't have the consistency of commercial yarn. Or certainly not when I'm spinning. I know some spinners who are absolutely consistent and perfect. But yeah, the Zoom Loom and it's also just a fun little thing. I think pretty much everyone's familiar with those. We've seen variations on it, but you go in all 4 directions until you've got this nice little woven square that you then pop off. And I would suggest that if you're not sure how your spinning is going to look and you don't necessarily want to do a swatch, that's a fun alternative. So, as I said, we're coming on to the end of the episode, so I thought it was only right for me to answer the question that I asked you last week, which was, if you could only make one kind of project, what would it be? We definitely have some factions in the comments on YouTube and in the Ravelry group, which is great fun. Some are unquestionably shawl knitters, because the shawls are so varied. You can have anything from fine beaded lace all the way to chunky big cowls. We've got the sock knitters, which are pretty passionate about making handmade socks. I think if I were to say, I'd have to be part of the cardigan clan. So if I could only make one thing, I think I'd stick to cardigans. They're practical, they're very wearable, and again, the variety that you can have, going from my future planned featherweight, which will be in lace weight, bonkers, I know, all the way to a bulky, chunky, big, kind of wintry cardigan with lots of buttons all the way up to there. Yeah, I think cardigans are the route I would take. Of course, that was just a theoretical question. Don't have nightmares over it. We can knit anything we like whenever we like. And I suppose that brings us to this week's question. So for this week, it's a question, and I suppose it's a bit of a challenge as well. I would be interested in seeing what your new goals, your new plans are. So starting from this September, and whether it's a plan for a day, a week, a month, or all the way to next September, where we can review our great successes together. What new goals would you set starting today? What's your new thing, whether it's with crafts, whether it's with personal life? What would you change, and what can we help you make your next goal? If you're learning anything new, do come and show us on the forum. And again, you can say hi on Twitter, where I'm Vero, and on Ravelry and Instagram, where I'm That Canadian Girl. I've started recording some fun tutorials, so I'll be posting some a little later this week. And then I think next week, I might even have some company on the podcast. So see you next week. Bye-bye! And I don't think anyone needs to feel like they... So come and join us. We're a nice group. Really enjoy having new users, new friends.